Hello! This is our second tutorial for pastel month, and we are going to use soft pastels, and I've got a piece of the Canson XL dry mixed media paper taped down to my board. Now here is a tip for you. One of the best things to tape down your paper to are these canvas boards because they come in standard sizes, just like your pads of paper. You can see the reflection of my lights. And you know, you don't have any paper banging around the edges. I just make sure my tape is long enough to go around the back, and then it's easier to remove it. I'm just using washi tape to tape my paper down. You can use painter's tape, or you can take masking tape, and if it's too sticky, just stick it to your jeans and then tape it down. This sandgram paper is a little more durable than like a lot of papers, so it won't cause any problem, but if you're working on a more delicate paper, just, you know, stick the tape to your jeans a couple times. The reason I like to do this is because then I'll have a nice border of clean area to handle when I'm all done. The pastels I'm going to use are the Paul Rubens, the assorted set. They came out with a portrait set originally, and I really like them, but the colors were very muted, and so this set is now out. It's 36 colors. I think it's right around $40, and they're very soft, kind of like Sennelier, and this does offer a really nice assortment, and I think we'll be able to use just the pastels in this set for today's project. If not, I've got my pastel drawers right in front of me that I can pull out if I need a color. And I really like drawers like this. I would say if you're going to get into pastels and have a few different brands, it's really nice if you can combine them by color together so you get the best of all worlds. And if you want, you can sketch on with a pastel pencil or a hard pastel. It's completely up to you. I'm not going to start by sketching. I'm actually going to start by painting. And I'm going to start with a kind of cerulean blue color. And I'm just going to go ahead and put a swipe right across the sky there, right across the top. And yeah, I think I'll start with that. Now, when I'm using my pastels in a set like this, I'll actually put them in standing up when I put them back, and that way I'll know what colors I've used, so I don't end up if I get confused, or it's not so bad with a smaller set like this, but if I want to go for another blue and I want the same color I already used, I'll know what that is, basically. I'll throw in a little bit of blue. I'm going to put in some lighter blue. And do a sky here. I'm going to get in some light yellow, kind of a warm light yellow, and the reason I'm going with a warm color is because it's less likely to make green if it gets mixed in with the blue. Put that down there. I'm going to grab a little, oops, I want to put that right back up on its end like I just mentioned. I think I'll see what this color looks like. I've got a big piece of paper on my table so I can kind of swatch out a color if I need to. I think that'll work all right. Just a little bit of this. Kind of define some clouds, some cloud areas that I'm going to put in here. I will blend this a little bit, so I'm not getting too, you know, detailed or anything. I'm just trying to get an idea of what I want to have. And I think I'm going to have a little bit of this, this violet in there too, which can gray down a little bit. I'm going to want a little pink. I think this one's probably the closest what I'll find that I want here. Now you can blend your colors together if you don't have just the right color. You'll find that a lot of times pastel artists will amass hundreds of pastels, so they can just grab just the right color and put a stroke down so they don't have to blend. Now another reason to keep all these sky colors upright like this in the box is because we're going to have some water in the foreground, and we're going to be using some reflections. So we'll want to bring those same colors. So what you can do here is blend with your fingers. You can blend with a sponge. It's completely up to you. I think fingers work really well for this. And you can see that the colors are smoothing out a bit, but I can still see the tooth of the paper. So what I tend to do is I'll do maybe all my blues, and then I'll switch fingers and, you know, do the yellows. They can mix in together a little bit for this layer. I tend to start blending, and then as I work up, I do less blending. So I do like to fill in the grain, unless I've like done an underpainting in a specific color that I want to I want to remain bright. All right, I'm going to go in and blend with some of this really pale blue here. Don't fret if your pastels break, because it's just going to be easier to use them. And you can tell you're starting to fill the tooth a bit when you start to see the tooth of the paper, you start to see the powdery pastel buildup. Okay, now you don't want to overblend, because then you will get mud, but for this layer I just kind of want to fill in that tooth and give me a little bit of a base that I can work into. Now keep in mind, different pastel artists will have different techniques. Some never blend, some like to just keep those raw strokes, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's completely up to what you like. I'm going to grab a sponge really quick and just kind of wipe off some of the extra. You can also do this background in pan pastels. Like if I wanted to do some pan pastels, I could just go in. This is what a pan pastel looks like. It's a big like pot of color. It's almost like eyeshadow. And then I could go in and I could throw in, you know, some of that in there too. I generally would use that as my bottom layer, and then I would work on top with other pastels. So, well, before I add more to the sky, I want to figure out what I want to do for the water. It's got kind of a swamp here, so I'm just going to kind of have it meander around. We're not going to really see this color. I'm just using it as a way to throw in some of that color. And I'm going to tap off the extra dust right onto my paper. You could also tap it into a trash can. That would work really well. Now I want to build up the sky a little bit more. I like to work back to front, because then if I go to put trees on top, I don't have to try to go in and paint around anything. So I'm going to go back in with some of this dark. I won't need to put as much this time, and honestly, the paper's not going to hold as much this time because we're starting to fill in the tooth. Now, if you have other paper that you want to use, that's totally fine. I've been really enjoying this paper because it's so affordable, and I find the texture to be very conducive to colored pencils and oil pastels and soft pastels, but there's no one paper that's going to be perfect for everything. So kind of keep that in mind and use a paper that works best for you. If you have a paper you really like, then by all means go ahead and use that. You don't need to use this paper. And I'm going to throw in kind of like a cloud mass. It's going to have a fair amount of pink in it. It's also going to have some purple. It's a little bit darker, so I'm going to go in with this darker purple here. Now, if your pastels, maybe you're keeping them in a bowl or something. They've gotten a little dirty. What you can do is you can get a bowl of rice, and you can put them right in that bowl of rice or a box of rice, and that will clean up your pastels for you, so that you don't have to wipe them off on a paper towel. I was just noticing I have some red pastel dust on there, and thought somebody might have a question about that. It's not that bothersome, I don't think, but it might bother some people. Now, you could use a sponge applicator if you don't like to use your fingers. It's completely up to you. A sponge applicator will probably take away some of the grain. I would want one that has a little bit of a rounded tip, so I could either use a makeup applicator, I could use a soft tool that's got a rounded tip. Sometimes your applicators will remove pastels, so that's just something to be aware of. The soft tools by Pan Pastel usually don't. They tend to push the product off of itself, so that's kind of that's a benefit to them. You'll use less material overall. I kind of like these two. These just kind of eyeshadow like blenders. I will use them to sketch with. So I'll pick up some pastel here. I'll bring it over here for these far away clouds. Things that are closer to the top and bottom of your painting, those things are going to be closer to the viewer. So your horizon line is kind of in the middle. Things further away from your horizon line are closer to the viewer. So like if I'm doing if I'm going to do one cloud and spend a lot of time with it, it's going to be the clouds that are closer to the top of the painting, so that because they should be bigger and they should be more dominant, and they're going to like give me scale and depth. All right, I'm going to do a little more pink. Kind of that pink on, over, and around the purple. Kind of don't like how that's just a straight line, so I'm going to bring a little bit of this up over here too. Make that, break that line up a bit. I know at this point I'm going to think, well, I might not blend that much anymore now because I want to keep it kind of fresh. So I'm taking this lavender. I think I'll actually break this so I can have a smaller flat edge to work from. And see, having that tape on the side, it gives me a place to grab onto, so I am not I'm not going to smear my work. So that can be really frustrating if you're working in a pad and you haven't taped it down, or you are just working on a loose sheet. That could be kind of frustrating. So, I mean, you can go to the art store and get those art boards, their canvas panels, really inexpensively. I mean, you can get them at the Dollar Tree as well. And it really doesn't matter the quality of the board because you're just using it to tape your work down. You're not painting on it. I leave mine wrapped in plastic though, so I could paint on it if I want to in the future. All right, so now I'm going to go for this kind of light. Actually, you know what? No, I'm going to go for more of a brighter, but still kind of pastel orange color, and throw some of this under some of these clouds. I'm going to tap off the excess right now because I feel like I am getting a little too dusty. I also want to swoosh in a little bit of that. Put a little bit up there next to that orange. Right, orange next to blue will really make a little bit of a pop of color, which is kind of pretty. Go in with this yellow. I'll break that. Sometimes also if I feel scratchy, a bit of scratchy color, I'll break it. Sometimes you just get a funky hard spot. But yeah, don't be afraid to break your pastels. I have a little bit more yellow down here towards the bottom, so you can be a little more generous with it. And your clouds down here can just be little dashes because they're closer to the horizon, they're further away, the sun is lower, and it's lighting them up a little bit more. You can do a little bit up in here, grab some of the undersides of the clouds, but it's not going to be a ton. And then finally, as a last step, I will add some white. And if there's anything you want to blend, just be careful you don't make mud. You know, you can, if there's some grain that you don't like the look of, you can go in and kind of tap it out. But you just want to make sure you don't make mud. Now the white is kind of the strongest color that we have, so you want to use it pretty carefully because once you get that white down, it's difficult to have other colors take purchase because the white is opaque, and well, they're all a little opaque, but the white is really strong and it will make it difficult for you to get a dark color once you get that white down. It's kind of like it's kind of the strongest color that you're going to be using, so just use it. I would say use it last and use it really selectively. Although once you hit it with fixative, the white's going to be the first thing to disappear, so because it does fixative darken your colors a bit. But I'm pretty happy with that sky. And now I'm going to do these colors, these same colors, in the water, but I'm going to just kind of sketch out exactly, not exact, but kind of a better idea of where I'm going to want this marshy water to be. Because I don't want to put these colors everywhere. So when I want to put in some silhouette colors, because if I have some like those really pale colors, and then I want to silhouette some trees, if I want to have like a big mass of dark like grass and foliage, it would be kind of a fight to get through those really pastel colors. So that's why I want to just kind of get a good idea of where I want to put those in first. And generally you're kind of replaying the colors you've already used. You're not going to see as much texture in the water as you do in the sky, so you can blend a little bit more. A little bit in there. And these pastels are pretty soft, so my layering, how much I can layer up on them, is going to be a little bit limited. So just kind of keep that in mind. If you're working with like a pastel pencil or a new pastel for your first layers, you'll be able to layer more up, and it will take you a little longer to fill the tooth. These are really soft, so they fill really quickly. It's nice to have a variety of different pastels. I tend to prefer more softer pastels. I also tend to prefer more soft colored pencils too. So I mean, it's a lot of personal preference. But like a hard pastel, I would say would be like a new pastel, a prank pastello, a Conte crayon. Those types of products are a little bit more firm. Let's see, maybe get a little bit of that lighter color in there now, because we're starting. I can kind of blend the colors together with this lighter blue. And then I'm going to go ahead and use my fingers to blend. Another thing you might want to have on hand when you are working with pastels, and I can pull this, any of the loose dust, I can just pull that into the background. That's not going to hurt anything. Something else you might want to have handy when you're doing pastels are either baby wipes or a wet rag. And if I'm using oil pastels, I like to have a spray bottle of rubbing alcohol and a rag. Usually I like a baby wipe, because then I don't have to worry about washing it. That's really good for taking the oil off your fingers, and just a wet rag is great for taking off the chalk. It's actually pigment and clay in a pastel, but it feels chalky, and it just is an easier way to describe the material. All right, I'm going to tap that off. And I'm going to add in some of the pinks and the kind of corally colors. There's no real light pink in here, but I think that's all right, because I'll add a little bit of white eventually, or a little bit of a lighter color. And get in some of this coral. And do just a little bit of the yellow next to the coral. And a little bit of the white. And I'm just going to blend with my other hand, because guess what? I forgot to grab the rag. You can use a kneaded eraser if you need to pick up some pigment as well, so or even some poster putty, something where you can take some of the excess off if you need to. And again, you can do that with pan pastels if you want. I like to have less texture in the water. I just think it gives a nice contrast. You're having that repetition of the colors, but it has less contrast, so I think it looks nice. I do think I need to brighten it up a little bit. Oops. A little crumbly there. So I'm going to try to put down some strokes that I don't blend out, but I'm trying to kind of press it in there so I don't get a grainy look. Don't be afraid to break the pastels. You're not curating a museum of art supplies. You are an artist painting, learning how to use them. You can't learn how to use them when they stay in absolutely pristine condition. Knock back a little bit of the grain. Okay, we are doing good. Now we are going to put in, some of the foliage in the back, and I'm going to kind of start with, I'm actually going to use black, and I'm just going to kind of cut in a kind of a loose horizon, and then I'm going to wrap it around a little bit. I might need to go into my greens, because I do have some greens in here, but I don't have the deep valued greens that I'm going to need, so I'm going to get my green drawer out here, and I'll end up taking a few of these darker colors. I have a variety of greens. I think this one, let's see if I could tell the brand by how it feels. I think this one is actually a Mungio Gallery handmade. I'm gonna break a piece up. Actually, I've got a broken one here. It's another brand. I'll use that. Oh, this is a Schminke. This is nice and soft. That's the other nice thing about having all your pastels together. You'll have some that are broken to just the right size, and then you can keep different ones at different lengths. I'm planning on getting some more pastel drawers. I like to have them all together because they get used. They don't tend to get used if they're in their little boxes. I put the Paul Rubens portrait set into my pastel drawers already. If you're hard pastel underneath and you go over it with a softer pastel, it will stick. Now, there's a lot of dust there because of that soft pastel, so I can go in and I can kind of just grab it and kind of smush it and drag it around. And if I have any shapes I want to make, I can use this little applicator to tap them into place, but I do want to keep some texture. So I'm kind of tapping, basically just to trap that dust and get it to purchase on the paper. Work upward a little bit there. And I'm going to go back in the black. You could have actually done this painting on black paper. I think it would have looked really cool. You can experiment with different papers for the look you're going after. Now I'm going to take a brighter kind of olivey green, but it's a little brighter, and add another layer of foliage in here. To have fun and get to know your pastels a bit. I'm going to add some of that in here too. Not sure what brand this pastel is. Doesn't really matter because, you know, you can go, pastels will look they'll look the same as they're going to show up on the paper because they're opaque, so you don't have to swatch them out. I wouldn't even recommend swatching them out. I'd recommend just playing with them and seeing what you get. I think that was over there. I'm going to add some of that darker green. When I tap, I'll be tapping my board forward to get rid of dust so that I don't end up drawing any of that pastel dust over the sky where it could cause me some graying and some icky colors. I'm going to go back in with my little applicator here, so if there's any dust I want to just kind of trap and move around or sketch around with. I like to let the colors of the water peek through. I don't like seeing the grain of the paper, like I said, unless I have like a specific underpainting, or I'm working on a colored paper like a red or something where like having those little pops of color would be really beneficial. With this being just like basically a beige paper, I don't really care to have much of that showing through. So I'm trying to blend my color over it. If you don't like that, or if you're working with a colored paper that you chose specifically to make your landscape pop, then you don't have to do this. Alright, I'm going to tap this off. Alright, I want my values a little bit darker in the back, and I want them to be a little bit brighter as we come forward. So I'm going to go in with, let's see, oh, you know what, I can use a square pastel. This teal, this is just an inexpensive pastel. I believe this one's Mungio, or one of the Mungio made ones. And this cooler color will help me add some depth. And since it is harder, it's going to kind of scrape in and leave some marks. And feel maybe a little bit scratchy. I wouldn't really say this feels scratchy, but it's kind of scratching in a little bit. So it's really nice if you want to give some texture, if you want to give some lines and some marks. I think I'll take some like kind of navy blue color. Oh, you know what? I'll use a new pastel. So that one right here, it's kind of a navy. It's a little brighter than I thought it was. I'll do a little black new pastel so I can really just kind of like dig in there a bit, get some like stray branches and textures. So it does help to have those different hardnesses and softnesses. But if you're doing this whole thing with like a set of the Faber-Castells, you should be able to do everything you need to do. And some shadows here at the base of the tree line and behind. And some shadows on the edge of this foliage by the water. Throwing in this lighter green just to give me a little bit better value range, so I can kind of see what I've got going here. There, I think that helps quite a bit. Yeah, maybe just a little bit of a brighter, more saturated green here. I like these Paul Rubens assorted. These are really nice. I would say if you are in a budget and you want a really soft pastel, give these a look. And also compare them against the Sennelier sets of 40, because I know that they've had some really good deals on those lately, so you may actually find a bargain there too if you're looking to add to your stash. I will take a look and put links in the video description, especially if I find a good deal for you. All right, so let's go back to the black, the softer black from the Paul Rubens set, or whatever black you have, and I'm going to start working some of these silhouette shapes. There's little clumps of like grasses and stuff here and there. So I'm just kind of planting them, and now I'm going to go in with a hard pastel. Actually, maybe I'll do a pastel pencil because, well, maybe this will be alright. I'm going to pull up just some little shrubby textures. Because this is a sunset, so we don't want to have too much color in our foliage. But I also like to have some, because I don't just want it flat. All right, I'm going to go in and put some trees. Put one back here that's a little bit shorter. And we'll put one here that's quite a bit taller, so we have some scale. Get the main trunk there, have it go right off the page for this big one. That's why when we're done with the sky, we want to just kind of leave it be, so we don't have to go and blend around these trees, and that's really going to add in some scale. If you have a problem doing this, you can use some hairspray or some fixative to lock down this bottom layer so that you don't have, so it's not smearing on you. But the thing is with the fixative, it can darken it, so I would say try to not do it if you don't have to. And then you can go in with a pastel pencil, just kind of scribble it off, make sure it's nice and soft, and you can go in and add some tiny branches. And you probably will use like a new pastel or the edge of a pastel to get some medium-sized branches, because it is hard to get the darkness on a pastel pencil. You can also use a charcoal pencil or a piece of vine charcoal. And start with a skinny tree, because you can always make it fatter, but you can't always make it skinnier. And if you need to grab the work, grab it by the tape area. I don't know in what order I'm going to post the pastel videos because I just posted a landscape. So I'll probably, this one will probably be coming up later. When you sharpen pastel pencils, I think Derwent's coming out with a pastel pencil sharpener, but I generally use a knife because pastel pencil leads are so finicky and so delicate. That noise is kind of scratchy. Nice thing about using these boards too is if you're working on several paintings at a time, then you could, you know, get a whole pack of those boards for a few dollars, and you could have a, you can get a pack of like 10 9x12 boards, and then you can just, you know, use another one for your next painting. You don't have to untape it if you're not sure if you're done with it or not, which is nice. I'm going to tap that and see what we have here. I want to break this so I can get a sharp edge. There was some little branches that are in sharp silhouette in the foreground. Having those detailed things close in the foreground really adds scale too. Pastel can be a difficult medium to control, or a difficult medium to get details with. So have fun and try not to stress about anything too much. And tone down some of these areas that seem a little too bright with the black. And I think I'm going to call this beginner pastel landscape done. Other things you could do, you could add some reflections into the water, or it's actually more like shadows into the water. Like if you wanted to, you could pull like some of these shapes into the water like that from those trees. You could pull some grasses. And that sort of thing. You could even throw in like little sparks of light and reflection peeking into different areas. That's kind of fun sometimes to get those little ripples. Here and there. Just be careful not to smear anything you've already done. If something doesn't feel balanced, you can go in and add a little water or something. But, you know, have fun and explore this new medium, and I hope you create some really wonderful things that you enjoy and that you're proud of. And keep in mind, not every painting will come out great. Not every painting will turn out exactly like you envision, but the only way you're going to learn is by practicing. So, from my dirty hands to yours, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and we will see you next time. Happy crafting!